Hey crew, it's Pitt, and I'm back with some more MBTI. Today we're going to be looking inside the mind of comedian Shane Gillis from the Adam Carolla Show. But before we begin, let's go ahead and talk about the system because you've never seen MBTI done the way that I do it. I have changed the Myers-Briggs type indicator system into something that makes a little bit more sense. We have 5 questions that we ask as we're going along. We're looking for confirmations of thought patterns, right? And are you focused on things or ideas? That's the first question. Is it the physical, concrete things that have happened or that you can put your hands on from now into the past? Or is it the ideas and concepts and things looking from now into the future? With those, do you either gather new ones or do you sort through the old ones? Is it all of these or is it the best one? With that, do you do it for yourself or do you do it for the tribe? Self does not mean selfish. It means that you take the energy or the information or the thing and you do it for yourself first. Then you give it to the tribe, as opposed to being tribe-centered. You give it away right away, and then you take your enjoyment from it. Are you rigid or flexible? Do you say it's my way or the highway? This is the way that it's got to be done. Or are you trying to make accommodations for people and be a little bit flexible in how things are enacted? And are you direct or informative? Do you say what you have to say in as short a time as possible? Or do you say it 3 times and chase down a rabbit hole? All of these things add up to this type system, and it helps us to identify things within ourselves that we want to change. Reasons why we might get hung up on some things and make the same stupid mistakes every single time. Now we're going to dive into the interview, and we're going to watch and see. We're going to look for these indicators, things or ideas, new or old, self or tribe, rigid, flexible, direct, informative, so that we can get an idea of what maybe how Shane Gillis thinks, so we can identify maybe some of the things for ourselves. Let's dig in and see what's up.
So for you, why don't we step back a little bit and start with your upbringing and then figure out, we'll go through SNL and we'll get to here and we'll sail past where we're at now.
All right. I'm from Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. Grew up nice, middle-class, suburban family, Catholic, played sports. Everything's good. Went to Army, went to West Point for football. Quit right away.
Right. Why right away?
It was hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I cried.
That's definitely things, right? The sensory is greatly affecting him there.
Really?
Yeah, I cried.
And we're getting a broad overview of things, right? So we're not really getting a whole lot yet. It doesn't seem to be informative. We're not getting too much about these individual things, right? We're getting a list of things.
Boot camp and went home.
Football and Army are essentially the same thing. It's just
it turns out
screaming at you.
It turns out football is way harder than boot camp.
And football's brutal.
Division I college football sucks.
I played a lot of football. People have no idea how brutal it is. And by the way, it's never the games. It's the practice. It's only practice.
And then at the college level, you practice like 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day. It's just meetings, lifting, film, training room, film.
Right.
I mean, it sucks, especially when you suck, and I sucked.
Well, you had to be.
Okay, so there wasn't a lot of ideas. There was a lot of things, right? We watched the films. We have class. Not even class, right? We watch films and we weightlift. We go back to films, and so that's a list of things. It's not talking about ideas, so that's leaning me more towards the things. It's talking about a multitude of things and not the best thing, so that's leaning me towards gather the things. That is not definite. It seems to be more self-centered than tribe-centered. He's not talking about how great the team was or the camaraderie. He's talking about how the experience sucked for him. That's the sensory sucks for me, right? So that's going to lend me towards a self. He seems to be direct. He's not extrapolating. He's not chasing rabbit holes. They're interviewing him. They're interested in what he is saying, but he is giving a shortened version of the answer. That lends me towards direct.
Good enough to get recruited to play there, right?
Yeah, I was good in high school because I was big.
Yeah,
and then the work ethic part came in, and I faltered.
The other part about football that nobody understands is when you play O-line like you play offensive tackle, and many other positions. You don't even touch a football. You don't see a football. You do nothing that has to do with football.
It's a totally different sport.
I never thought about this. I played 11 years of football. Okay. When you are...
What position did you play?
I played a defensive linebacker, offensive guard.
Okay.
When you are playing football for fun, you are either quarterback or wide receiver, defensive back. You're throwing the ball, you're catching the ball, you're pitching the ball. That's what you do when you're playing for fun.
Yeah.
You're never just blocking the entire time. If they said, hey, we're going to the beach, Shane, we're playing football, you're going to be blocking the entire fucking... No, you're not touching the football, and you're not going out on a pass, you're not running, you're not passing, you're not doing
tackling.
You're not even tackling. You just block. You go, fuck this. It's the least fun thing I've ever participated in. Well, that's what football... That's about 80% of football.
Yeah. It's funny because, I have friends that played, they played wide out and quarterback and all that. I literally played a different sport. Offensive line is a different sport.
Offensive line
it's like judo.
Is the most...
Or sumo.
Thankless, boring, the most miniature concussions you're going to get with boredom sprinkled in ever, with zero praise and almost no dick sucking from cheerleaders.
Yeah.
That's how I was. I played offensive line. I was like, ugh. But then I played defense. I was like, oh, yeah now it's fucking awesome.
Fun.
This is awesome. And then I'd go back to offense again, and it was bored off my ass.
Yeah.
So you go to West Point.
Yeah, West Point. I quit, transferred to Elon. It's in North Carolina.
But you were recruited to go to West Point?
I was.
All right. Well, that's good.
I was good. I was good at football.
Right.
And then, I played one season of college football and then quit again.
After leaving West Point?
Yeah, left West Point.
This could be very well the best thing as opposed to many things, right? This sucks. It's an idea, but it's talking about the literal thing sucking, right? So that's narrowing down to this one worst thing as opposed to the one best thing that you normally see with an SI. I'm going to look for some more indicators of that. I'm still looking to see if we get some ideas thrown in here. There hasn't been a whole lot. He's a comedian. I'm sure there are some. They're probably going to be put in support of the things, though. Like, I'm getting a lot of sensory from him. Right? This sucks. It's a terrible experience. That lends towards the SI.
Literally 3 weeks.
Why West Point?
But that could be SI Demon, right? If everything sucks, that could definitely be an SI Demon.
They played, like, Notre Dame and Army Navy and at Texas A&M. There were so many, like... As far as, like, getting recruited, I was getting recruited by, like, Eastern Michigan, Temple, and Army.
Mm-hmm.
Army was, like...
Yeah.
That was cool.
So you went there, you flamed out.
Yeah.
So it was three things, and he chose the best thing, and it wound up being the worst thing.
Yeah. You transferred.
Not even flamed out. I mean, we're talking. Didn't even like the match.
Really?
Just showed
no pilot,
up.
Nothing.
Just showed up, and I was like, all right, I'm going to head out.
Yeah.
Yeah, then I went to Elon in North Carolina. It's 1AA. You remember when App State beat Michigan? Appalachian State?
Yeah, I did.
We were in the conference with them, and we played them that year. Like, that was the conference. It was like Georgia Southern, Furman.
So you went to a place that you felt you could fit in a little, wasn't quite as regimented?
All right, so again, we didn't get any ideas in that. That was more of the sensory things. It is hard to get it down to new or old here, right? Because he's talking about old things off the top, so that automatically would lean that way. So you can't really determine by that way. So I'm trying to determine by the actual experience, right? And it's not about broadening the experience, it's about getting the best experience. And that's an SI trait.
Yeah, for sure. But the football was just as good.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the hardest part, was physically getting your ass kicked every day.
Yeah.
Again, the experience, the worst experience.
But I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of growth in there, too. And as monotonous and thankless and boring as O-line is, it's a kind of good lesson in that you got to sacrifice and give yourself up and do your job so that somebody else can carry the ball across the goal line and be mobbed by the adoring teammates and fans, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Sort of the opposite of stand-up.
Yeah.
If you think about
Definitely the opposite.
It's
like being a writer.
Yeah, versus
in
being
comedy.
up on stage.
Yeah.
So,
Now that's more of an idea, but it's also examples as an idea. So
you do a year there, and then what?
And I quit football, and after that, I just stopped going to like school, stopped going to class, whatever. Get home. I graduated from Westchester, outside of Philly. Sold cars when I got home, and then started doing stand-up. So then I moved to Philly. I lived in Philly for like 6 years, doing stand-up. And then when I was 30, so like 2-3 years ago, I moved to New York. And then within a year, I got the SNL thing.
Was stand-up always...
So that, again, no ideas, a lot of sensory. But it's things that have actually happened and recounting of the experience. So that is more of a, these were the experience than this could be the experience. These are the new experiences. It's more of sorting the old ones than the new ones now. We're still talking about the past, so try not to lend too much weight to that, but it seems to be that way. Now, the self-tribe, most of his stories seem to be centered around him. So I'm leaning more that way. I'm looking for examples of tribe, but we haven't had a whole lot of tribe pushback or tribe feedback. It has been mostly about him and mostly about his experience. That is the point of the interview, but he could have pulled it off towards something else. It seems to be more centered on him than on others. He seems to be quite direct too, right? We're not getting an informative vibe at all.
Something, or at least comedy, always something that was sort of...
Now the movement and flexible, I'm going to have to keep an eye out for that, right? We're looking to see if he's accommodating others' ideas as opposed to controlling. It seems to be more controlling, right? I got this experience, it was terrible, I quit. I got this experience, it was terrible, I quit. That's more of a control the situation than an accommodate the situation, right? What Adam's saying is more of an accommodate the situation. Yeah, it kind of sucked, but Shane's not about that. Shane's about the it sucked, I'm not with it, right? That's more of us me, and that's more of a control.
Sort of rattling around
Definitely.
in your head?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you didn't come from a background that fostered that?
Everybody was funny. My family's very funny.
Mm-hmm.
Very, like, dark humor, for sure.
And were they funny?
Yeah.
But did they think you were funny?
Yeah.
And again, he's talking about funny, but it's more about funny as the experience as opposed to funny the idea. So
Yes.
Well, that's good.
I think so. I don't know. But no, I think they thought I was annoying.
But were you making them laugh?
I was the youngest, yeah.
So, family's funny. Family has a problem with alcohol.
Yeah.
And the funny and alcohol are good to a point. And then at a certain point, you drop off.
Then it gets mean.
Then it gets mean at a certain point.
Eventually, it's a fight.
On the way up the hill, it's funny. On the way down the other side, it can get...
And also he's not informative, but he's interjecting in the middle of someone else. If you're not informative and you're doing that, then you're probably leaning more towards the control side.
Hey, well, you keep digging until you hit like the worst thing you can possibly say.
Right.
While you're drinking, you're like, I'll say this.
Right.
You keep pulling it off, and then finally you're like, yeah, your wife's a whore.
Right.
It's like, oh, we got to fight.
So...
Again, that's more of an sensory than... Let's listen back to it, but that seems more like a sensory than an idea, right?
The worst thing you can possibly say.
Right.
While you're drinking, you're like, I'll say this.
Right.
You keep pulling it off, and then finally you're like, yeah, your wife's a whore.
Right.
It's like, oh, we got to
Now that is bringing in some new ideas, right?
fight.
So now you're selling cars.
Sure.
You're living in Philly, selling cars. The stand-up. Does somebody say you got to go do this? I mean, there's two types of stand-ups I interview. There are the people whose friends at work sign them up for the competition. That's validating because these are just dudes you work with.
Yeah.
Then there's people who no one says they're funny, but they do it anyway. And then there's the people where it's sort of in between. Their friends, their family think they're funny.
I think I was a little in between. There was a guy in Mechanicsburg that was doing an open mic. One of my coworkers was going to do an open mic, and somebody was like, hey, do you want to go watch him do stand-up? And I was like, oh, shit. I had no idea how to even get into stand-up comedy. Like, there's zero comedy in Mechanicsburg. And so then I went and watched him do stand-up, and I was like, oh, I can do this. You know?
That's some control, right? I can do better as control.
It's one of those feelings. Like I was at an open mic at the Harrisburg Comedy Zone, and I was like, I'm just as good as these people.
That's control, right? That's not flexing around the tribe. That's making the decision that your way is the way.
And so like,
not necessarily a bad thing.
a month later, I tried it, and I was not. I was very, very bad. But I liked it.
Yeah, he kept
So it's about the sensory, not the idea.
going.
Yeah.
And
that was it.
And then what was the move to New York?
So there's New York comics like Dan Soder and Big J Okerson. They were like coming through Philly. I would feature for them when they were at Helium in Philly, and so they started taking me on the road. And I felt like I was good enough to make the jump to New York.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it.
I felt like it, right? Nobody's pushing him to it. There's no tribe feedback involved. It's more of a self. It's more of a control. It's about the experience. It's about the best and the worst experience. So we're going to go ahead and do the typology. Let's go ahead and run the chart over, and we're going to go through it. The 5 questions. Things or ideas? Things, right? That's going to put us on the left hand of the screen. New or old? Old. That's going to give us the second column. Self or tribe? Self. That's going to give us the top 2 rows. Rigid or flexible? He seems to be fairly rigid. That's going to be at the top, right? So we've got things. We've got things. We've got old. We've got tribe or self, and we've got rigid. So that's going to give us an ISTJ. Give me 1 second, and I will flop that around for us. ISTJ is right here. And now the final factor is direct and informative. That has to do with the third slot. The first 2 slots are how you get the information and what you feel responsible for, and then the second and third ones are how you give it back. If you are informative, that means that you are extroverted in this function, and you're giving it all away. If you are direct, it means you're introverted in the function, and you're holding it for yourself. He seems to be introverted, right? He seems to be direct. He's giving the whole thing, the whole answer, but he's not extrapolating. That appears to be direct. That's going to be introverted. That is a straight up ISTJ. So ISTJ is going to be very much concerned with what happened. Now, most of the time, they're going to remember what happened correctly. They're going to be good at organization, right? But they're going to have a problem getting the job done. They're going to have a problem with the actual physical things and seeing new things in the correct light. But without even really thinking about it, he's going to know what the experience is. He's going to remember the experience probably correctly. But you have a tendency at the top and the bottom to get stuck, right? You can't work out of the top and the bottom. There's a lot of information. Most of the information at the top is good. When you're wrong, it hits you really hard. He's going to feel responsible for other people's thoughts and the rationale of people making decisions, right? You see that a lot in comedy. It is feeling responsible for making sure that the tribe's thoughts are the correct ones. He's going to do that. He's going to get defensive over and have problems with the third eye slot. It's where you see forward, but it's also where you tend to get defensive, right? You think that this is the way, and so if anybody questions that, you're going to feel it, and you're going to feel pushback on that. For him, that's going to be his feelings and his morals. We've already seen that, right? That's what happened at Army. It was against his feelings. Done. He's defensive. That's done. Let's transfer. And the throat is going to be what you miscommunicate and misunderstand. That's going to be the future possibilities and the ideas, right? You keep the ideas open. You don't want to settle on one, but you miss a lot of them when you're doing that. It's not a personal thing. It's just the way you're built. The heart is what you really want to do with your life. And what he really wants to do with his life is to give other people good experiences. The best experiences, as a matter of fact. And he wants to be able to do that for everybody. Doesn't mean that he's good at it. Just means that that's what his heart will really feel good if he does. He's fairly good at comedy. I am sure he feels fulfillment when these people get their thoughts corrected because of his feelings, right? And that probably feeds that heart a little bit. Now, the solar plexus is what really feeds it, and that's being logically consistent for him. The TI is your internal thoughts. If your internal thoughts are correct and you are logic checking yes, no, then that's going to feed him giving the experience correctly. The sacral is what you intentionally choose wrong. Nobody ever says, hey, I want to do the wrong thing, but people do it all the time. It's normally because of right here. You know in your heart it's not quite right, but it feels good, so you're going to do it. His problem is going to be the ethics of the situation and how other people feel. Now, you can make the argument that the SNL pushback had a great deal to do with that, right? It felt to everyone else that what he said was wrong. That's up in the air. It's debatable. But that was the problem, was the tribe's ethics. The base is where you just get it wrong. And it's not that you're unintentionally choosing it, it's just getting it wrong. And that is narrowing down to the best possibility. He had 3 schools that were recruiting him, and he chose the hardest one. Okay, so maybe that's not the best possible guidance, right? The NI, the introverted intuition, is all about seeing the best path forward. And here, you're not going to do that. You're going to need to very much work on keeping this correct, to getting the logic correct and getting the ethics correct so that you're actually making the best choices. If any of this resonates with you, if you see markers in Shane, the way he holds conversation and the way that he explains things, and you're like, well, maybe that's me too. I have a whole video on the ISTJ and how that you can take this and integrate it into yourself. I have a whole system, the Infinite Integrations playlist, that will tell you how to do it, how to make yourself better in the ways that you want to be better. If you consistently find yourself not making the best choices and getting the feelings wrong, there's a good chance that this is you. Those are the things we work on first. We're going to go back now. We're going to look for some confirmations, right? We're going to watch a few more minutes just to see if we see any of the organization problems, right? Is it the best experience? Is it the worst experience? We've gotten a good bit of that already. Is he feeling responsible for correcting how people think, right? Not on an individual level, but as a group. Is he getting defensive over his feelings, over his morals, and that type of a situation? And is he miscommunicating all the ideas? He's got a bunch of ideas. Are they the right ones? Is he communicating them correctly? We're going to check the base and see if we're having some bad choices in the best possibility, and if we're misunderstanding the ethics and choosing the wrong side of that. So let's dig in and see what's.
I know the SNL story.
Sure.
Many people do, but I don't know. There's some interesting facets to it.
Certainly.
Was SNL. Now, a lot of people grow up with the dream of SNL.
Mm-hmm.
They just watched every episode, and that's the end-all, be-all.
Yeah.
But that wasn't you.
No.
And you're more of a stand-up than a sketch person, although you
Definitely.
do some really funny sketch stuff we can get into as well. But
And he's not informative, but he's chiming in, right? That's the control aspect of that.
so for you, how does SNL come about when you're not pursuing it?
They had just seen me at Just for Laughs, Montreal.
The festival.
There was a comedy festival. I did New Faces. So that's, for the listener, that's just like up-and-coming comedians. They have a showcase for new comics. And I guess there were people from SNL that were at the showcase, and they were like, he was funny. So they contacted my agents, and they asked me to do like a writing packet. And I didn't do it. I was like, I don't want to be a writer, and
So, no, that's not my experience.
I'm probably not going to ever work for SNL. And then they were like, all right, that's fine. He didn't do the writer's packet. We want him to audition. And so I was a little like, I don't know. But then they were like, he doesn't have to do the preliminary audition. He can just come in and audition on the main stage. Just straight to the main stage audition. And I was like, all right, yes, I'll do that. And
It seems-
yeah.
So it seems interesting that they were just watching you do stand-up. Did you do any impressions in that stand-up?
No, I don't think so.
So they just liked your ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, the way you thought.
Yes.
And yet it's not a format for stand-up, but they saw something and they thought maybe we can.
Yeah, I think they might have. I think they saw that I would be good at the desk for like daily weekend update and all that stuff. I think that was like where they were probably going to place me.
So that's some tribe thoughts, feeling responsible, right? Not necessarily for correcting, but understanding. I said go.
Does that mean doing the news, or does that mean sliding in on a chair?
I think initially it means sliding in and doing basically stand-up, which is what that is to some extent. And then I think it maybe, I don't know. It's tough to say I'd host weekend update, but yeah.
So you go do the
I was never on the show. I was like, yeah, I'd probably be hosting.
So you go try out and walk us through that process.
So what they do? Did you ever?
No.
They put you in like there's probably like 15, 20 people auditioning. I don't even know. They put you all in green rooms, all like the cast's green rooms and all that. So you're in 30 Rock, and then they make you wait. They make you wait like 3 hours. You just sit there.
That's a lot of experience.
Because I guess it's like a tactic to make you like nervous, or like
There's
see
some
how you handle
thoughts.
pressure or whatever.
Right.
But the whole time I genuinely was like, I'm never gonna get this. I don't care. So I was very calm.
That's defense in the moral, in the feelings, right? I don't.
And
then,
you were going to do stand-up for your
Yeah, I was just
audition,
gonna do
right?
5 minutes of stand-up.
Was it stand-up you knew like the back of your hand, or did you shape it a little for
changed
this?
it. I remember changing it right at the last second, and I forget how I changed it. I think my one friend Reggie was like, "You should do an impression." I might have done one. Yeah. Anyway, so I didn't care at all. And then when you walk out to do the audition, you see the stage, then it hits you, and then you're like, "Oh fuck, I do care."
You did care. You were just defensive over the possibility that they wouldn't like you. Like you were defensive over your feelings. That's what that was.
You start like I was.
Because you're on the actual SNL stage.
And he's not seeing the possibilities, right?
So nervous. Yeah, you're on the stage where they do the opening monologue and the band is behind you, and then like Lorne Michaels is just sitting there, and the whole studio's empty. There's just a camera 5 feet in front of you. It was probably the most nervous I've ever been.
I have had to do plenty of that kind of stuff.
Okay, so that wasn't the best confirmation, but there was a couple of points in there that does a fairly good confirmation. If y'all would like to see me do Adam Carolla, let me hit me in the comments down below. But this seems to be a fairly good fit, right? It seems to be that, like, this is not a medical diagnosis. I'm not trying to say that this is any type of affliction or anything like that. This is to help us identify things within ourselves, to help us fix ourselves, right? That's what I used it for. That's what I put it out here for. And that's what I hope it gets picked up and taken for. We're looking for different patterns of thought so that we can identify some of the things that trap us. The bottom half of this traps you. There's a whole video devoted just to this type. If you identify with what we have identified in Shane, check it out. I will link below the Adam Carolla video that this is from. I definitely recommend that you go back and watch the whole thing in its context. Make sure that you understand everything that they're talking about. Make sure that you know all of the things. Go back and check and see if I was correct. Go back and see if maybe you have a different opinion. If you do, let me know down below. We'll talk about it. But this seems to be a fairly good fit for Shane. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a somewhat difficult topic. I have changed MBTI. It is not the same as it is anywhere else, and that is for a reason. I have changed some of the definitions. I have changed some of the placements. I have changed the way the stack gets ordered. None of it is by chance. All of it seems to fit fairly well, logically consistent, but I'm TI defensive, so who knows? To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete, just the way that you are, and this has been Pit State. Peace.